The rules of war are supposed to be well defined. For example, no attacks on humanitarian workers. But what would happen in the event of a cyber attack on humanitarian workers? As technology evolves, the rules of war largely have not. CCTV's Sean Calebs investigates in our series, Code War.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Former U.S. President Richard Nixon was forced to resign in disgrace. And one of the first cybersecurity laws passed in the United States, the Privacy Act of 1974, remains a legacy of the Watergate scandal. Nixon wiretapped his so-called enemies. Congress deemed that the increasing use of computers directly affects citizens' privacy. But ever since 1974, lawmakers have been playing catch-up with high-tech, trying to implement cyber laws.
It's hard for Congress to do anything on simple legislation, and certainly something as complicated as this. It's got to be an extraordinarily difficult task for them.
In simple terms, as technology advanced, cyber laws didn't, leaving legal waters even more muddled.
Let's say a cyber attack causes mass financial panic. Okay. Causes people, stock markets to drop 10,000 points, and bank accounts to be zeroed and run on confidence on the banks and all those sorts of things.
All markets will close at 9:15 today.
No money is stolen, but the cyber assault fuels a crisis.
Now there's panic in the streets, and people are rioting and so on. The enemy, who's caused this by a cyber attack, hasn't killed anybody directly, hasn't destroyed any property, but this is still pretty serious stuff. Does this count as an act of war? Would we consider this an armed attack? That's an interesting question. Nobody knows the answer to that, what the law would say.
The Geneva Convention governs rules of war. Military operations are obviously fair game, but hospitals are not. What if the target was a power grid that serviced both a hospital and a military base? Could that be a target? It's a moral question because there are no laws to govern such a quandary. Experts point out that both international and domestic laws are riddled with questions that have no clear answer. For example, if I run this red light, that's a crime. But what if the police who pull me over takes my smartphone and want to get inside to get all the information they can? Is that legal? Well, it depends on the jurisdiction in the United States. In some states, the courts say that's fine, but in others they say, police, hands off. We all adapt to the dramatic changes in technology. Who knows what the world will look like in 15 years? But if you're looking for clear-cut laws to deal with cyber crimes, experts say, think again.
That is, the laws of, let's say, 15 plus 2030 will have been developed in response to some information technology scandal that broke in 2017.
And Sean joins us here in the Washington studios. Sean, Herb Lynn was saying this is serious stuff. It's actually scary stuff in a way. Talk to me about the importance of actually coming out with some ground rules internationally.
Yeah, you know, it is important, clearly. If you look back to 1995, there were about 16 million people using the web, using the internet. Today, that number has escalated exponentially, you know. And the big question is, how are they going to do something like this? Because there isn't a law that goes from the United States to a European nation to an Asian nation. A lot of it is basically countries trying to work this out, trying to use common sense. There are no laws. It's very difficult. And so when you focus on trying to get someone to do the right thing to avoid something like he talked about, what if some individual in another country comes after the U.S. banks, causes all this conflict, causes all this concern? It's very difficult to even go back and pin back where that came from, who did it. So it's not coming easy. And the last thing that Herb Lynn said I thought was very telling. When I asked him what it's going to be like 15 years from now, he goes, we're going to be talking about an event that happened in 2017. It's just lagging behind the technology, and there's basically no hope that it's going to jump dramatically anytime soon.
And I guess part of it comes down to, geez, I've got to give up a little something. They've got to reach a consensus, and you'll find one country, maybe they're not really all that interested in it, but it benefits everybody in the long haul.
Without question, Mike.
Sean, thanks so much. Some of the talks are happening right now in Beijing. China is hosting talks with more than 25 countries and the United Nations about cybersecurity. CCTV's Su Yuting has there.
Many issues are up for discussion, including the formulation of rules, internet governance, the role of the UN, and capacity building. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Li Baodong touched on China's views and practices on cybersecurity in his keynote address.
We should continue to study how to apply existing international laws to cyberspace and explore new international norms. China, Russia, and other countries submitted to the UN General Assembly the International Code of Conduct for Information Security in 2011, and we are ready to work with other sides for improvement.
The UN representative highlights the significance of building international consensus on cybersecurity.
On the cybersecurity issue, China, as we just heard from the Vice Minister, understands that it is important to maintain cyberspace as an open, cooperative, and secure platform.
This is the first time that China and UN have co-hosted an international workshop on cyber issues, and international cooperation are needed for the formulation of international rules. And this meeting is expected to promote mutual trust among nations and enhance cybersecurity. Su Yuting, CCTV, Beijing.
And Sean Caleb is still here with us, and we want to ask you about, there are lots of rules in place right now. What's considered acceptable when a country has an armed attack? Now, the question, though, is cyber attack. Is that considered an armed attack?
Well, it's interesting. If we look at the judicial system, the International Court of Justice basically weighed in on this. And they said it's not the weapon that causes the damage, it's the amount of damage. That's basically how they gauge, is this a crime? But then it kind of muddied the waters and said, okay, countries can go in and launch surgical strikes with today's weapon. A cruise missile can basically take out one house in a very crowded city. So if you target one computer as opposed to the whole grid, well, that makes it even more of a gray matter. So there's just no definitive answer out there right now.
Lots of murky stuff out there. Well, let's talk about something else. Now, the local level, it's impacting individuals and countries and around the world, as we know. We're talking about cyber theft and cyber crime, but there's something else that's out there that we have not talked about this week, and that's, of course, cyberbullying. Listen to this.
I think that what happened with Tyler is unacceptable, especially by today's standards. Everybody has a right to privacy. No one has the right to show someone's personal life online, and it's not funny. It shouldn't be considered funny, and they should be punished accordingly.
He was mentioning Tyler. That was a student at Rutgers University here in the United States just a few years ago. A student there killed himself because his roommate saw him on a webcam with another man, and he was accused of bullying the student to the point that he just couldn't take it anymore. He killed himself. So cyberbullying is just one more of the issues that we're seeing now as a result, right?
Yeah, and it is really one of the more heinous issues too. And as you know, we're both parents, and the last thing we want to do, our kids that grew up with this era with computers in front of them, as we were talking about in '95, 16 million users, today 1.7 billion. It's easy for some anonymous kid to get on and attack another kid. When we were growing up, there was on the playground, people pushing each other. Well, it's a lot worse today. The difficulty is prosecuting this, because anytime you do, the internet's out there so people can talk to each other. So anytime there's a law that affects the internet, then in the United States, it's viewed as an attack on free speech. And so people try to shut it down as much as possible. Herb Lynn, who we talked about in our story just a short moment ago, his organization tackled this problem 10 years ago when basically the internet was really just taking off. So it shows you this is something people have wrestled with for a long time. And basically the best analogy, the best hope that Herb Lynn could offer was you kind of teach kids and bullying on the internet the same way you do taking a kid to the pool. Know it can be harmful, but tell them, you have to be careful. You have to use your common sense to enjoy something like this. So it's up basically the parents trying to discipline their kids, but it's tragic. And we were talking off camera a minute ago, and in this series, I think I learned more about the whole cyber world than on any story I've covered in a long time. It's fascinating to me, and I hope we continue to push on this.
Well, Sean, as you know, we're the type of guys who remember when they were just on our desk, and now there's laptops, kids have got devices in their hands. Instead of the shoving, you can be doing something like this. It's really fascinating. Thanks so much.